What has your biggest what the was that moment been since you became a parent?
Okay.
I love this leader.
Why do you parent like that?
Hello, welcome back to Why Do You Parent Like That for another week. My name is Abby Harrison and I am the creator and host of this podcast, and I am stoked to have you here. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe and share, do all of the things, and I know I'm being demanding, but it really helps other people find the podcast and puts us out there for other people to find us and just makes my little heart happy. Subscribe to all our social media if you want to know what's going on with the pod. Also, if you like to watch your podcast, I feel like I haven't mentioned this before, but I post the full visual episode on my YouTube channel, so that is linked in the show notes if you are a person who likes to watch podcasts. Substack, my Substack. It is my newsletter, but it's so much more than a newsletter. You get so many great things. You can head over to the Substack to see what you get, but it costs less than a cup of coffee per month to be a paid subscriber. It's $5 per month, and so you get all of these goodies and all of these extra behind the scenes things and opportunities to have input on the podcast, and it also keeps the podcast running. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for listening. This podcast has been finding itself in the #1 spot for parenting podcasts in New Zealand quite a bit recently, and that actually just blows my mind. I can't believe people are listening to this little passion project of mine. I just love this little community so much and feel like I'm living the dream, so thank you. This week I have Sharyn Casey on the podcast with me. She is just a total powerhouse, eh? She is hilarious, but we also get into some of the more vulnerable sides of her parenting journey, most notably her time with her youngest son Ruben in NICU after he was born at 29 weeks, which, if you aren't familiar with babies and pregnancy and gestation, that is really, really, really freaking early. So that was a stressful time for them, and she really gets into the nitty-gritty of that, and I'm very grateful for her vulnerability, but also she had me cackling through this whole podcast, so I hope that this episode brings you some joy as well. Enjoy the Sharyn episode. I can't wait to hear what you guys think, and I'll see you next week. Love you. Say it back.
Why do you parent like that?
Today's guest is someone I have admired for years, a broadcasting powerhouse who's been a constant presence in New Zealand's media landscape. Sharyn Casey, or as many affectionately know her, Shazdog, has spent nearly 2 decades lighting up our radios and screens with her quick wit, infectious energy and genuine heart. From her early days at More FM Wairarapa to becoming a staple on The Edge, Sharyn's journey has been nothing short of inspiring. She co-hosted popular shows like The Edge Afternoons and brought her charisma to television, hosting Dancing with the Stars NZ and serving as a panellist on The Masked Singer NZ. But beyond the camera, Sharyn is a devoted mum to her 2 sons, Tyson and Ruben, and wife to fellow radio host Bryce Casey. In late 2024, she made the heartfelt decision to step back from her role at The Edge after 18 years, choosing to spend more time with her family and explore new ventures, including studying Te Reo Māori and sharing her experiences with that learning. She's also been refreshingly open about the harder parts of that journey, sharing publicly about her fertility struggles, difficult pregnancies, and her family's NICU experience with baby Ruben. Her honesty has resonated with so many, offering comfort and solidarity in the messier, more vulnerable sides of parenting. So Sharyn Casey, welcome to Why Do You Parent Like That?
Oh, tēnā koe. Oh my God. That was really nice. You put so much effort into my intro, and it's made me think back of my whole career of being like, wow, I should have put more effort into intros I did for interviews. That was really nice of you. Thank you.
No, that's all right. I listened to this one and people are now going to click that this is why I do this, but this podcast called How to Fail with this lady called Elizabeth Day, who is like, if I could be anyone when I grow up, I want to be Elizabeth Day. She's so cool. And she has always put so much effort into her introductions for guests. And it always I don't know, I think it just set the vibe nicely of like, hey, you're someone whose work I really appreciate and I'm really glad you're here, and I really want people to feel like that when they come on the pod. So that's how I feel about you.
I feel very special after my kids this morning have told me that I just nag them in the morning. So that's very exciting.
Nice. Nothing like kids to humble you right back down to earth, eh?
There's nothing like it ever. Nothing like it.
So how old are Tyson and Ruben?
So Tyson's my oldest. He's 7 and Ruben is 3.5. Ruben was 3 months early though, so he does develop slightly younger than his age. So we're so used to that now, but they couldn't be more different. Tyson was an angel child until he went to school. And then that's when he adopted some sass and personality. And Reuben is just, you know, we still don't really know why he was so early. He just had stuff that he had to get done.
He was ready to go.
He was like, let me out of here. I got stuff to do. And
he was like, sorry, Mum, you're nice and comfy, but really the world needs me.
Yeah, he's like, this is boring. And so, yeah, he hasn't stopped since the day he was born. So he's just an absolute weapon.
Yep.
Like, yeah, one's real empath and cares what people think. And the other one is very like,
not
I don't
so
give
much.
a fuck what you think about me. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, it was interesting because my oldest is 3 and we were pregnant at the same time. And obviously, like, I followed you. And so
Yes, that's right.
I had kind of assumed that we were due at a similar time, and then when you announced that you'd had Reuben, I was like, oh my gosh, and like really was like, oh my gosh, that's like, it was so real for me being at the same gestation as you, of like how big that was for you guys, of how early Reuben had arrived. So
my older sister is 31 weeks at the moment, and I was like, that's so buzzy because I had a 2-week-old baby at that point. It's so anytime I hear someone that's like 29 weeks onwards, I'm like, oh my god, like I had a baby at this point. Like that's so crazy. Yeah. It's buzzy.
So I guess we'll jump into the first question because we're kind of talking through it anyway, which is, tell me about your journey to becoming a parent.
So I always wanted to have kids like quite young. I was like, I'm gonna have babies when I'm 25. Thank God I didn't do that because I was a idiot at 25. So Bryce, my husband, and I, we started trying. I think I would have been like 27 or 28 when we started trying, and had no indication that it wasn't going to be a smooth ride. And before we had Tyson, we had 3 miscarriages before that, which were caused by a septum in my uterus. So it's like a piece of tissue that stops the blood flow in your uterus. And so one side knows it was pregnant and the other side was like, well, we better have an old period. And it would shed and cause a miscarriage. So once I had that identified, had that fixed by Amar, who is an obstetrician gynecologist, and he is just the goat. And he then went on to become our obstetrician with Tyson. Reuben, he's still in our life. He was at our house last week. Reuben's named after him. But yeah, it wasn't a smooth ride to get there. And I think that you spend your whole life trying not to get pregnant, and then when you try to get pregnant, it can actually be really, really hard for some people. And the emotions around that of like feeling jealous of your friends, and when you were like, congratulations, but you also want to
congratulations, I'm dying inside.
So it is a wild ride, and like I think all of those emotions of jealousy and fury when you're trying and it's not working are really valid. And also when you finally do have the kids, you feel guilty for the parts that you don't enjoy, because
I know,
you know, like you had to, you know, you really wanted this and you remember how sad you were. Like you don't have the right to, you know. I think it made pregnancy easier because I was like, I would rather spew every second of the day and still be pregnant than not still be pregnant. But there is like a little bit of guilt when things that are really hard are happening and you're frustrated.
100%.
Yeah.
And you're always like, if I could go back and show past me, like they'd just say, get over it and be happy. You know, like the self-talk you give yourself is so, you just give yourself no grace at all. It's so mean.
Yeah, and I think that was, I remember everyone, and I never say it to anybody now, everyone before I had Tyson was like, you're just going to have this instant love that's so overwhelming and you don't even understand, like blah, blah, blah. And so when I didn't have that overwhelming, like I knew I loved him, like, and I knew that I would like die for him, and you know, but I wasn't having that disabling feeling that everyone was talking about.
No.
And especially for women, because we're going through all the hormones and stuff like that. It wasn't until I started talking to people that I realized that for some women, it's more moments. And when they do things, you're like, God, it's like my heart is on the outside of my body. But I think it's really important that people know that feeling that people go on about isn't always the actual case. And it also doesn't mean that you've got postnatal depression. It just means that you're not getting a Instagram, Pinterest version of what everyone's talking about. Yeah.
I always make sure to tell friends when they get pregnant, like, I need you to know I did not love either of my children for a while. You know, they were little strangers. They were little strangers. I didn't know them. Like, everyone's like, oh, you know, they've been with you and they're connected to you. I didn't know that kid. That kid was just like chilling in my body. And then it came outside my body and I was like, oh, I actually don't know you at all. I don't know you. And so I knew they were important. Like, that priority shift internally happened immediately. I was like, yep, I'd take a bullet for you, even though I don't really know you at all.
Yeah.
But I always say for my first, it probably took about 6 weeks until he was like smiling and reciprocating some emotion. He wasn't just a little potato anymore. And then for my second, I think it took about 2 weeks where I was just like, okay, I know that I get past this like hormonal phase and figure it out. But yeah, now I've started a podcast about it, so I yap about it all the time. But like, I just feel like people, like, you're so set up to have this feeling of like, this is the person I love the most in the whole entire world. And I didn't have that. And I'm so glad that people had said to me, like, it's okay if you don't feel that, because or else I would have panicked.
Yeah, I remember a couple of us said it to one of our friends that was really struggling with her first child, and she just burst into tears. And she was like, thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh God, because no one tells you.
No.
Everyone just tells you about the fucking fairies are going to come out or something. Yeah.
And it sounds like some people do experience that. Like, I've had people come
definitely.
on this podcast and say, like, man, they'll put on my chest and just that life was never the same. And, you know, I was cracked open, and they obviously have that experience. But I think it's just important to be like, that doesn't happen for everyone, and that's okay.
Totally. I think I had it with Ruben, and because Ruben and I, it was COVID, it was level 4, I couldn't see anyone. I was in hospital pregnant for like 6 weeks by myself, 23 hours a day. So we had this connection of like, okay, man, like, you've got to stay in there. I'm doing my job. You do your job. And then we was in NICU for 7 weeks and like having to leave him. It was a different experience. So our connection is different. It doesn't mean that I love her more than Tyson. Like, definitely not. It just took me a little bit I was so consumed of like, why do I not feel this like disabling love that everyone's talking about? And I did feel it. It was just like in moments. And then it was like as my hormones readjusted and things like that, then it kind of came along. But it was, it wasn't like the thing that everyone was going on and on and on about to me.
I also wonder if there's a difference between the first and the second, because the first, obviously, you're like,
terrified.
Holy crap, I'm a mum. That happens. And so it's like, not only is this baby being put on your chest, but immediately you've had this death of self and a huge identity shift all in one moment. And that is like quite overwhelming.
Yeah.
Quite an overwhelming thing to experience all after you've just gone through a labor, like a lot. And I think it makes sense to me that some people are like, I actually don't have capacity to immediately love this thing because there's a lot going on right now. Whereas the second you don't have that identity shift, you're like, I know I can keep a baby alive. I know what this future's going to look like. I love this. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was fully sedated for both of my births. So I had a lot of sadness because we waited and we wanted Tyson so much. And we didn't get to have that moment of when Bryce and I saw him for the first time together.
Yeah.
Like, it was so amazing because it doesn't usually happen. But Amara, our obstetrician, and Denise, our midwife, brought Bryce back into the room once Tyson had been born so he could still cut the cord because they knew like what a journey we'd been on. But I didn't see that. I was completely sedated for that.
It's so hard for you.
I didn't with either of my boys meet them, like with them on my chest. Like I didn't have them. I've never had that moment with either of them where I look at Bryce and we see them together for the first time. So I think that was also like a real big struggle when Tyson was born because we wanted him and we loved him so much. And we didn't get to have that moment that we'd been through all this pain to finally have our joy. And so that was really hard. And with Ruben, like the first time I saw Ruben, I didn't even see his face because he was completely covered in like a ventilator because he was through in an incubator. And I'm in a bed and I'm waking up with a rat test being done in my nose. And I'm like, hey,
my gosh.
Hey, what's happening here? And I was like, is the baby all right? And they're like, he was having some trouble breathing, but he's good now. And they showed me a couple of photos and then they wheel my bed into NICU and like I could touch his finger. But I didn't see his face or anything. Like I didn't see his face.
Hard.
I didn't see his full face without. They were real. What the great thing was about Starship, though, is even though he was in fetal distress when he was born, they managed to pull him out, get a photo. Like they get a photo, wrapped him up. Like once they got him breathing and stuff, they got a photo before they wrapped him up in the plastic because they wrapped them up in plastic when they're that early, and they got a photo of what he looked like. Without
so you could see him.
So I could see what he actually looked like because I couldn't see him without all that stuff on for weeks. Yeah, so it was totally different experiences, but it was. I look back now and I'm like, fuck yeah, we did that. Like we did that. We got
my gosh,
through that. Yeah.
In my normal, not on maternity leave life, am a hospital social worker, and one of the wards I cover is the SCBU ward.
Yeah.
And I just think, like, parents in SCBU and NICU are like, they just get stretched to, like, the absolute inch of their resilience, strength. Like, I just think that experience, and having not gone through it myself, being a witness to it, that just seems to me to be, like, the hardest experience to go through.
Oh. And also just like leaving them at night with someone that you've never met before.
Yeah.
But the fact that like so we were at Starship in Auckland, and that we were able to ring the ward 24 hours a day to check to see how he was, all that sort of stuff. And when we went home at night, because it was also lockdown, so I still had to come home and see Tyson as well.
Yeah.
And I'm still getting up every 3-4 hours to pump so that I can take milk into NICU, and it's a real system. I know.
People always
it's a real system.
People say, like, I've heard so many people say, and if you've got friends who have got kids in NICU and SCBU, let this be your lesson. Don't say this to them. I've heard people say, at least you get to go home and have a full night's sleep. Like, you're not waking up with a newborn. That is, like, so
Bullshit.
insensitive. And also, they're encouraging the birthing parent to pump if they can, to get that breast milk. And so
you go home and you pump every 3 hours.
So you're still having the disrupted sleep.
Yeah, so you have to pump, and then you put it in a container, date it, write how much is in there, so that and then the next day you see all the mums or dads like turning up with these like bags full of milk if they were lucky enough to get some. And then you're getting mastitis because you're pumping so much, because they don't have a sucking reflex until they're about 35 weeks. Yeah. And so you're like going and doing this, and then people go, oh, at least you can rest at the hospital today. And it's like, you can't rest because
there's no rest.
You've got to do kangaroo care. You're on constant watch of the monitor for their oxygen, their heart, and all that sort of stuff. There's other people around you. You've got to do their cares where you're doing their temperature, you're doing their feeds, which you've got to hand feed them through a tube, which is weirdly like fucking punishing, like standing there holding a tube.
They don't eat fast.
No, and then it's like, okay, sweet, I'll go and get. So, but and then once they're out, you can't, like, if you've got a preem baby, you can't put them in and out heaps of times because it's overstimulating and it hurts. So once they're out for ages, and then you put them back in, and you might go have lunch, and then depending on what their levels and stuff are like, you might be able to get them out again. And it's like, you're not relaxing at the hospital. Like, you're still, I mean, the good thing was it gave me more time to heal from a vertical C-section that goes, like, up past my belly button.
Sharyn, ow.
Yeah, it was fucking brutal. But, so that was a good thing. It also, it's an emotional roller coaster. You know,
I think as well, just like there's people looking at you all the time. You're in a fishbowl, and so normally, where you can go home with, you know, if you're not in NICU or SCBU, you can go home and you can have all those feelings in the privacy of your own home, and you've got your support system around you to support you. And like, if you're gonna have a breakdown, no one's looking at you. But in SCBU and NICU, like, you're so hyper aware that there's other parents walking past, there's nurses walking past, and like, yes, you get to know people, but it's just different not being in the privacy of your own space.
Yeah, and I think that two things. One thing I thought was really interesting. One is when you're in like those environments, when they're doing the rounds in the morning, if it's not your turn, you wear headphones that have like music on, like you can pick a radio station so that you can't hear the other families being spoken to, but you can still stay with your baby, which is really, like, the fact that they even think of these things for privacy is really amazing. The other thing that I found really eye-opening about being in NICU that has sat with me so much is how hard the nursing staff work, how hard the doctors work. The HCAs are just like constant, but also there's so many parents and families who are in tough positions financially that all of a sudden have to stop working to pay $10 parking a day. So if that's, and it's COVID, so you can only come one at a time. So if you've got both parents visiting a day, that's $20 a day. So across a week, it's $140 a week out of that family.
Just for parking.
Just for parking. There was people that were having to catch the bus who had just had a C-section and couldn't drive, and they're exhausted, and their kids in NICU, and they're like barely able to like walk very far, and they're having to catch the bus. And there was also people that the nurses would call and be like, hey, are you guys coming in today? And they're like, oh yeah, I've just gone to do a job today so I can do the parking or whatever. Or people that were outside of Auckland that couldn't get a rental car. They'd been flown up with their kid. They're there with no car and they need a taxi. They've got their other kids there as well. There was one kid in there that almost died one night, and they could, like, the parents couldn't both come because it was COVID. Like, it was just so, like, I think that's the thing about NICU that really blew my mind was so many people that live in the, like, low income and people that was still going to work because they're like, okay, well, if baby's here, I'll go and earn some more money because I've had to have the baby 3 months early and, like, we haven't saved enough money yet. So I need to work. And it's just it's a real eye-opener, I think.
And that's, like, essentially what my job is like working alongside those families to try and figure out ways. But the system is just not in place for them. It's, like, unbelievable that you can have families that have found themselves in, through no fault of their own, in a situation where they are in a space like NICU or SCBU and have nothing set up for them and have these, like, social workers doing what we can, but you can only do so much as, like, what is set up for them.
I think it is really great. There are some things where you can claim back your mileage for petrol and stuff like that, which is really good. But I look at people that own the car park buildings who are million on million on millionaires. It's like, can you not just have one car park that you're not charging $10 a day? Like, thank you for the discount. But there's some families can't afford that. But so the families that can't afford that, give them a free ticket. Like, you don't need the $140 a week. It's crazy.
It makes me actually furious. I'm like, do you really need to charge people who are coming to visit sick family members or are in hospital themselves? Like, do we really need to do that? But, like, apparently we do. Apparently we live in a capitalist hellscape. Yeah. The other thing I was going to say is that the situation that I often get really caught off guard by is visas. So, like, if someone's here on a student visa or a non-working visa and they suddenly end up having a baby in New Zealand and end up with a huge bill at the end of their NICU stay because they're not covered by New Zealand healthcare, and they're like, so they're working throughout the whole NICU stay as well to try and pay off the medical bills to keep their baby alive. It's just fucked. Unreal.
It's so fucked. Yeah. Anyway, we'd be here all day on that.
Yeah, I know. It's wild. So once Ruben got home, like, how was that adjustment? Or, like, did he go home on oxygen or was he okay? What was
He was a rock star. He came home and he was just sweet. Like, we haven't really had any health problems with Ruben apart from the fact that he's, like, the worst at catching a cold. So if you so much as breathe around him with a cold or some form of sickness, then he will get it. Like, we never had gastro in our house until Ruben went to kindy. And then then that was the first time we all got gastro.
And now you've had gastro ever since.
So many times. It was beautiful. Like, Tyson, he's such a sensitive, empathetic, loving kid. And he just came down and he was, like, so excited. And he hasn't ever had, like, 1 ounce of jealousy or anything like that. He's just been such an awesome big brother. And I think that was also, like, an age thing. Like, he was about to turn 4, so there was almost 4 years between them, and it was a really good age gap. And they're so cute together. Do they argue? Absolutely. Is it annoying? Oh my God, yes. But when they play and they care about each other, it's just the cutest. Like, it's the best thing ever.
Heartstrings are like, yeah. And you're like, damn it was worth it, but it was so fucking hard to get there.
Yeah. And I think that, like, with Ruben, I enjoyed the newborn stage more because with Tyson, I couldn't breastfeed. I sucked at it. He didn't like it. He was allergic to my milk. It was a shit show. So we only lasted like 9 weeks. But with Ruben, because he was in NICU, there wasn't that pressure of, like, having to do it straight away. And so I was pumping for the first, like, 5 weeks. And then when I started to actually feed him on my boob, Lindley, who is, like, the queen lactation consultant that used to be at Starship, she's at Middlemore now, and she came to every feed that I did at NICU, and she really taught me how to do it. And so that was a totally different experience. So, like, I've had the experience where I tried to breastfeed, couldn't do it, absolutely hated it, dreaded it, to, I can actually do it, Ruben could do it, and it worked out great. And I did it for like exclusively for like 3 months, and then we started like mixed feeding and stuff. When he came home too, we would give him like a formula bottle before bed, because that's like my golden rule. Like, last feed before bed is a formula bottle, so that you're knocked out for an extra hour, hopefully. But yeah, it was just it was a different experience, but also knowing, like, on those long nights, I'll be like, okay, don't worry, like, this is going to end. Like, this will end. Like, this isn't going to last forever. It will end.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was helpful.
Nice. It's like, I feel like your story, not even your story, but just like, I just feel like we don't hear enough stories about the NICU experience. And I think it's something that quite a few people experience. And so thank you for sharing that, because it's a lot. All right, we will move on to the next question, which is, what does successful parenting mean or look like to you?
Successful parenting to me is that I just want my kids to be happy, and I want them to be kind, and I want them to be inclusive of other people, and I want them to always feel like they can tell me anything. And we have a rule in our house: if you tell the truth, you won't get in trouble. And so it's always like, what happened at school? Like, blah, blah, blah. And Tyson's like, nothing. And he'll try and kind of, you'll get a half truth. What I've figured out with kids is they'll tell you something, and then you ask them again, and then you ask them again. And then if you're in a situation where you've got two parents, then you get that one to come when they get home, they ask them. And the part in the story that doesn't change, that's the truth. And the bits that change are the bits that are not quite
potentially not quite so true.
Yes. So that's when we get that and we see that there are inconsistencies in the story once he's told it a few times, then that's when we'll be like, okay, if you tell the truth, you won't get in trouble, but you will have to take responsibility for it. So
I like that. That's great.
Yeah. So it's like something happened at school, and it had been a second time that he'd been in trouble for something at school. And so I said, like, it wasn't supposed to be a big thing, but I went back to school and I said, I'd like you to have a meeting. I'd like you to sit Tyson down. We'll come in before school, and I'd like you to have a meeting with him, like the teacher, the deputy principal, and us, and have a meeting with him. And I want you to keep him in an interval so that he has to make a card to say sorry to this kid that he had, like, thrown a ball at or something. And it was over the top, but it really taught him that lesson. And I said to him, I was like, it's the same as, like, if he didn't get in trouble for something at school and somebody else did. I was like, tell the truth. You won't get in trouble, but you have to take responsibility for it. So then he'll end up telling us the truth, and then I might feed it back to the teacher. And, like, one of his teachers goes to me, he's like, you're the only person I know that, like, narks on their own kid. So I was like, I just want him to tell the truth, but he knows that, like, I'll have his back, but he does have to take responsibility for his actions. But if he tells me the truth, the discipline won't be as severe.
So if Tyson murders someone in the future, he needs to tell you, and then you'll also go straight to the police and...
Absolutely. Yeah. If he gets caught stealing any crime, I'd take him down to the police station straight away. For sure. Yeah. I am that parent.
And implementing that with Ruben as well?
Yeah, definitely. And I have, like, their initials tattooed behind my ears. Mm-hmm. And they know that they're there, and they're there so that they know that I'll always listen to them if they need me. So it's like, I'll always listen to you, and we will always, like, we'll always figure it out, but you have to tell the truth. And so that to me is like something that's, I want them to be happy, I want them to tell the truth, I want them to be inclusive, and I just want them to have fun. And I was out for dinner actually with their godparents and some friends a couple weeks ago, and they were telling us about their older son, who their kids are like goals. They're such great kids because they're just such incredible parents. And they were telling us,
so good having parent friends like that you're like, I just want to do everything that you're doing, so that I'm just going to steal everything you're doing.
Such great parents. And they were telling us about how their older son kept coming home from high school and he was just eating so much food all of a sudden. And she was like, why are you so hungry? Like, you're not having enough lunch, blah, blah, blah. And in the end, he told her that he'd been giving his lunch away because there was a kid coming to school with no lunch. And I was like, that's how you know you've done it right, babe.
Yeah.
I was like, honestly, just like, of course he did. He is so that kid. And so now, godparent goals, they make extra lunch for him to take to school. And it's just like, of course, like, that's how you know you've done it right. And then every time we go to their house, their kids are so polite. They have conversation with you. Their friends are so polite and stuff like that. And I'm like, that's when I know I've done it right, is that when people come to our house, the kids are like, hi, Abby, how are you? Like,
yes.
Or you're like, hi, Tyson, how are you? I'm good, thank you. How are you? Same thing, same thank you. Like, just being good people. Yeah, that's my dream. Yeah. Those kids, And our friend, we've got another set of friends, and they had their first kid like quite young, and they've got 3 kids. And their kids, you can insert them into any situation where it's all adults. And if you talk to any of them, they'll have a full conversation with you. They're really loving and kind with all the little kids that are there.
Yes.
And they're also like, those sets of kids are like my kid goals. Like, they are just such awesome kids.
That's so nice. Because I used to work in a primary school as well, and the kids that you would be like, hi, blah, 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 how are you? And they'll be like, hi, Mrs. H, I'm good. I had a good week. Did you have a good week? Like, you're like, oh, just like kids that can have a conversation with you. Like, your parents are doing such a good job that you're not scared of adults and that you know how to engage, that you're being polite. And so good, eh? So nice.
Good. I love it.
On the topic of inclusivity, I guess that's like quite a big goal for a lot of people, but obviously a lot of people in our generation weren't raised necessarily with the idea of inclusivity in mind. Is there anything like specific that you guys are doing to like achieve that goal? And it's okay if the answer's no, it might just be who you are as people. But is there anything sort of like any conversations you're having or anything that you're doing to kind of like expose your kids to people that are different than themselves, or like to sort of make inclusivity that value for your family?
What I've noticed about kids is kids don't care. Kids, like, they care. Kids only have these homophobic, racist, mean opinions because they have been taught them, right? They've heard it, they've overheard you saying it, you've said it to them, it's coming from you. And so I noticed with all sorts of things, like my cousin and I were talking about this the other day, and it was like, so my friends, 2 lesbians have kids. Tyson said to me, he was like, why does blah blah have 2 mums? And I was like, because relationships just look different. Some people have 1 mum, 1 dad, a dad and a mum, 2 dads, 2 mums, but they all love each other the same. It's just, that's how relationships work sometimes, and everybody's family looks different. And he's like, okay, and that's it. And sometimes he might ask a follow-up question. He'll be like, but how did they make them? Because don't you need like a man and a woman? And then you're like, well, what you can do is that you can get someone that will give you the gift that they need, and you just tell them. And then as soon as you tell them and you're honest with them, they're like, okay. And it's like, he's got a friend that, one of his best mates, and he's got 2 mums. And Tyson will be like, yeah, that mum had him and blah, blah, blah. And he knows all about it. And it's not a thing at all. And also I find that with like, I got Bryce to get me some tampons at the supermarket. But he's walked in and I'm like getting changed, and you can see my tampon string or something. And he's like, what's that, mama? And it's like, well, women get their period. And he's like, oh, what's a period? And I was like, well, it's when your uterus sheds the lining of it. So once a month you bleed for like a week. And it's quite a big deal for a woman. It can make you feel a little bit weird and blah, blah, blah. And so you use that so you don't make a mess in your undies. Okay. One night he just goes to me, he was like, I'm glad I'm not a girl mom. And I was like, why? And he goes, so I don't reckon I'd like having my period.
Tell me about it, boy. Tell me about it.
But honestly, just from day one, anything he asks me, I want him to ask me, and then we just talk about it. And if you talk about it with honesty, that is like, okay. It's like we've got those Little People, Big Dreams books where they do all the celebrities, and we've got one on RuPaul, and it's all about like drag and stuff like that.
I love that book.
Yeah, and it's like, even when all that stuff was happening with like drag queens and libraries and stuff like that, Tyson was like, he's like, it's just, why are people mad about someone having fun? You're like, no shit, Sherlock.
You're like
exactly.
Yeah, I'd love to have an answer, but I don't. Yeah.
But I genuinely think like our thing has just been, we've always made an effort to not, so like, for example, like if you grow up and you marry a woman or whatever, we're like, well, we just take out the gender. So it'll be like, when you grow up and you have kids,
you marry
with
whoever
you
want
kids,
to.
Yeah. We're like, he's like, oh, like, well, or it'll be, you might have a girlfriend or a boyfriend or something one day. And we just kind of leave it open so that they know that it doesn't matter what that looks like. And it's, you know, they've got their gun pools and things like that. And they just don't see it. Yeah, they don't see it any different. Like Tyson loves when my friend Jay comes around, and Jay is like the most fabulous gay man with like, he's just fashion. Like Jay should just be called Jay Fashion Jones. And he'll come around and then he'll leave, and Jay would have had a bracelet on or something, and he'll be like, I want a bracelet like Jay. And like, he just thinks it's so cool, and he doesn't, they just don't, they don't think anything of it because they haven't been told there's anything wrong with it.
Yeah.
Because there isn't.
There's those Little People, Big Dreams books. I don't know if you have the David Bowie one.
Yes.
But the David Bowie one, I feel like tackles gender in a really great
really
way.
well. Yeah.
How it talks about that, you know, he was a boy and then he started thinking about that. Maybe he didn't quite feel right fitting in with that. And so he explored everything. And I just like loved, because like Freddie's 3, so it's still like a bit of a intangible concept or like abstract idea. And so I love reading that book to him because I feel like that's a really nice introduction of the idea that gender is different than biological sex.
Yeah.
Those books are so good, man.
So good. It's even little things like on book day at kindy, he wanted to go as Elsa. And I was like, cool, man. Wear your Elsa dress. Or I had a friend, her son's favourite colour is pink. So he just wears pink all the time. Wears his Wonder Woman outfit. She doesn't give a shit. She's like, wear whatever you want, because we're not putting this like ooh onto him. It doesn't mean anything. It just means that he likes pink. Big deal. So I think it's the short answer to my very long-winded answer is
It's great.
You just have to be honest, because they take your lead on it. So, and if you don't know, there's so many like cool Instagrams and things like that you can go on that tell you how to have these conversations. But basically, they overhear what you say. So if you're overhearing something, then not the one.
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
like they're gonna be like, oh, my dad said that. And you're like, no.
Yeah. And when I worked in a school, like a kid would say something and you'd be like, wow, that is your dad coming through your voice right now.
Yeah.
So
it was even
if you think you're doing it privately, if you've got kids, you're not.
Yeah. And it was even like, I think our most recent one was a kid at school had been listening to some hip hop song and said the N-word. And Tyson said, came home and was like, oh, what's the N-word, mama? And I was like, why? And he was like, oh, someone said it at school and I don't think that you're supposed to say that word. And we like sat him down. We were like, you are absolutely never, ever allowed to say that word. Like, that is the worst, one of the worst words that you could say. And
probably the worst word you could say.
Yeah, like N-word, F-word, like not fuck, the other one. And we were like, look, you cannot say that, because there's so many connotations of like, and these are some of the reasons why. And you can't say it, and if you do say it, you will be in so much trouble. There's only like certain people that can say it, and they're allowed to say it because they're taking ownership back of a word that was used derogatory against them. But you can never, ever, even if you hear it in a song, you skip it. So you don't say that bit. And we had that conversation, and he totally got it. And he was like, okay.
That's cool.
Cool. And it was just because we had that, we didn't dismiss it and be like, oh, don't say that, buddy, it's bad. We had the conversation of like,
head on.
Yeah, and I think that if you're honest, they respect it, and that it sinks in more.
That's really cool. I guess kind of leading on from that is the third question, which is, what is something about your parenting style that feels unique to you?
I think that we try to be honest, but we also try to make it fun. Like Tyson's in that stage now too, where kids are like learning swear words and things like that, and sometimes we accidentally swear in front of them, and we've said to them, you're not allowed to swear until you're 18, and on your 18th birthday we're going to go stand up the top of Mount Eden, and you are going to say every single swear word that you've ever wanted to say, but you're not allowed to swear till you're 18. And if he hears someone swear, we're always like, they're over, how old are they? And he's like, over 18, and we're like, correct. I mean, we are trying to drum out, what the hell, which all 7-year-old boys say. But yeah, that's our thing. It's like, we try and make it fun, but we're stern and we're honest. And I think that that's kind of works for us so far. And I think the biggest thing that Bryce and I agreed on from day one is that we are always on the same team. So even if we disagree about at the time, we in front of the kids will never be on a different team. So if Tyson tries to ask Bryce something and doesn't get the answer he wants, he'll come and ask me. And if I know Bryce is home, then I'll say, what did Daddy say? And he'll go, oh, Daddy didn't say anything. I was like, really? And I'll go out and I'll be like, Daddy, what did you say? And he goes, I said no. And I was like, well, Daddy said no, it's no. And we stay on the same team. And even if at the time we might be looking at each other like, nah, as soon as the kids have walked away, we'll be like, hey, man, like that's a little hard out or whatever, and we'll talk about it. But in front of them, we are always united on what we're telling them so that they know that we're a team, and you can't, like, we won't cross each other for them to get their own way.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And was that something that you guys had talked about pre-kids, or is that something that you've figured out in your parenting journey in terms of like making sure that you're really on the same page with things?
I think like watching like other parenting styles and seeing what worked and what we didn't think would suit our way of parenting, but
Yeah.
it was something that, we were like day one, we're like, we just have to be on the same team. Like we can't undermine each other in front of the kids because then they'll just not respect one of you. And one will always be like the person that's in charge. So when that person's not here, then they'll just like fuck around and find out on the other ones. Yeah.
And then I guess something from an outsider's perspective that is quite unique about your guys' parenting style is that you both have quite public figure jobs.
Yeah.
Like, how has that sort of affected your parenting, or like how have you explained that to, I guess the boys have like seen people come up to you out in public, and how is that kind of conversation?
We have to safeguard it quite a bit now. We probably didn't as much when they were younger, and then we didn't know that if you post something on Instagram that anyone can use your photo in a publication. So we had that, like, they knew we didn't want kids in the magazine. And then I was sitting next to Ruben's incubator and flicking through and saw my face and saw the post that I'd done on Instagram, which was fine because I knew there was a risk that it would get picked up. But there was like additional information that could have easily been answered by a text. So that pissed me off. But
it's just a bit yuck, like I know you're probably a bit like, you're probably trying to hold on to relationships, but as someone who's an outsider, that just feels so yuck.
Well, for me, it was like, the problem with it was I didn't, especially with Tyson being older and more recognizable, I didn't want him in a magazine, and I'd made that very clear. So when we did the announce that we'd had Ruben, we're not stupid. We made sure that what we posted was the information whilst we were going through. Yeah, it was the information, it was the image that we were comfortable with whilst our child was in intensive care. And everybody else respected that. But they'd scrolled back to a year or two before to get a photo of Bryce Tyson and I, off Bryce's Instagram. The thing that pisses me off the most about it is that I didn't get told about it. I found out about it sitting in intensive care next to an incubator. And got my number on my Instagram, could have texted me. There's extra information in there that was incorrect. And I think that was my thing, where it was like, you could have asked me, but now you've known you've upset me. You still haven't even apologized. And then Bryce did a thing a few years later, and there's another photo in there, and I'm like, just do the thing without, like, it just doesn't make you feel safe, because now that Tyson's at school and now he's more recognizable. So now we have a rule, we don't post them on our feed. And if we do post them on our feed, we always put a disclaimer.
Yes, I've seen that disclaimer.
Yeah, being like, please do not use this outside of our feed or whatever. We'll put them on our stories, but it will usually have a filter on it. So if you use it, if it's a picture, we'll have like something on it so that the picture isn't good enough to be used in something. Yeah, or it'll just be a video. Like I usually just put up videos of them, and then we just have like a private account for like our friends and family that we know. Friends. Yeah, but I do understand, like, that's also their job, but also like, we're not the Kardashians. No one's like that thirsty to see pictures of our kids. We're just So I think also it's a small enough pond to know if somebody's not comfortable with something, then don't do it. Yeah. Like, I wouldn't do something like that on radio. If I knew someone was uncomfortable about something, I'd never do it to get
I would feel absolutely horrific if someone messaged me after coming on this podcast or heard something that they'd heard on this podcast and said, hey, that's really upset me, like personally offended me. I would be like that would be such a stab. I would just be devastated.
I think the biggest part of it too was just the zero heads up. Like there was a zero heads up. So I'm sitting there and reading a magazine next to my baby. He's on a ventilator.
Really not well. Yeah.
And then I just like open the magazine. I'm like, whoa, what the fuck? Like, why is Tyson in here? I knew probably they would use it. I was like, that's incorrect. He was out longer than, like, he was in longer than that. And when you've had a premature baby, every day counts.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to lead all my shit with how I've had 3 miscarriages, like it's some form of like juicy tease. Like, it was just stuff like that.
Yeah,
anyway,
that's the thing. It must feel like my trauma is not your content.
Yeah, totally. And I don't think it was ill-intentioned, but it doesn't hurt to be
just
like,
not
hey.
thoughtful.
Yeah, like be like, hey, are you comfortable with doing this? Or, hey, could I check this date with you? Or do you mind if we put this in? You know, but it is what it is. But apart from that, the boys didn't really, I don't think that Tyson really realized until he went to school that we had public jobs. I think he kind of just thought it was normal that everybody's parents were on the radio or whatever. And sometimes he'd see us on a billboard or something, because he would see us and then he would see like Jono, who's Uncle Jono Pryor, see him on a billboard everywhere and things like that. So he'd be like, Uncle Jono! And he'd see them or whatever. But now he sees them all the time. So when Jono had his TV show Vince, which was so funny, he had a billboard and he's just wearing like a loincloth. And he's like, why is Uncle Jono in his undies? Like, just the funniest thing. But so now he understands, you know, people might talk to us because of our jobs, and that's okay. And if they ask for a photo, sometimes people have tried to get Tyson to be in the photo, and we're like, oh, no. And if Tyson will come near me, and then I'll just like turn him around so he's not actually in the photo. But most of the time, if we're with the kids, like, people won't say, they might go, hey man, and that's it, but they won't. That's nice. We live pretty.
Has it ever felt like your parenting is being examined more? Like, have you ever felt more self-conscious of the way that you're parenting just because of nature of your job? Yeah
If they're having a tantrum in public and I'm like, fuck, this is always the time when someone's like, and you're like trying to keep your cool and your toddler's smacking you in the face, it's the worst.
You're like, someone's gonna go to fucking staff and tell them that Sharyn Casey can't control her kid.
My God, I saw her kid was smacking her in the face. That's good times.
Oh, that's good times. I can't even imagine. That sounds so hard. How do you and Bryce like navigate that? Is it just something that you're just like, we're just dealing with it is the way it is, or is there like
you can't do anything about it? You can't do anything about it. I get really hot and sweaty. He's just like, fuck.
Yeah.
And he's like,
it is what it is.
He's more annoyed that it's happening. He's probably not even thinking about that. Whereas I get really paranoid about everything.
Yeah, I feel like I'd be the same. I'd be like so in my head, like everyone's looking at me.
And I get full sweats. It's awful. Awful.
I get that as someone that no one knows, so I can't even imagine how you must be feeling that. It's horrible.
It's awful. It's awful.
Okay, to the fourth question is, what has your biggest what the was that moment been since you became a parent?
No one.
I love this leader.
Okay, two things no one told me about having boys. Number one is like when they're little babies that they get testosterone surges.
Yes.
So, I remember Plunkett coming around one day and I had noticed that there were like morning erections.
Yep.
And I was like, what the fuck is happening? And I was like, oh my God. And I was like, I can't Google it because it'll be like an alarm if I'm like,
oh my God, somebody will show up at your house like, there's
I'm like a pedo. Anyway, so like Plunkett come around, I was like, oh, I have noticed that in the morning sometimes that and I don't know, like, and Bryce is like, spit it out. I was like, I don't want you to think that I'm like a creep or like I don't want to get arrested or anything. I'm just like wondering. And she was like, what is it? I was like, in the morning, most days he has an erection when I change his nappy, and I'm wondering if like, I don't know, like we're from Timor, like is he horny? Like what's happening here? Like why is this happening? Like what's happening? And she was like, oh my God. She was like, the amount of mums that ask me this because they're like, why is this happening? He seems too young to be having body reactions.
Yes.
Like, it's just the hormones. It's completely normal. And I was like, why is he going through puberty so early? Because like you hear those stories about babies born with their periods and shit. And I was like, oh, okay. And then the other thing that nobody told me was having, like, when you have a boy, is like having to somehow get shit out of their nut sacks.
Yeah, that is.
What the fuck? That's so hard.
Like, nappy changes on a boy are just so hard.
Yeah.
It's like, it's really nice having a girl compared to, because my 5-month-old is a girl, and it just, every time I change a nappy, I'm like, this is so much easier. This is just so much tidier.
Yeah, I think that those were my two, like, what the fuck moments. But, those are the ones that come to mind for me where I was like, what the fuck? No one told me about testosterone surges, and nobody told me about leaps, where they have their neurological growth spurts, and all you can do is feed them and cuddle them, and it takes you like 3 leaps to figure that out. When they're like that, just feed them and cuddle them, feed them and cuddle them.
All they want is to just be on you. You're like, what is happening?
Yeah. And everyone's like, enjoy those baby cuddles. You're like, I will. But it's fucking hard when I'm having that baby cuddle for 5 hours and I really need to pee.
Yeah, I'm enjoying the baby cuddles, but I'm getting a UTI. So
yeah, and I just want to like have 10 minutes of not having a weight on me. Yeah.
The touched out feeling that just I hate it.
Yeah.
I hate it.
Hate it.
Okay, we're on to the last question.
Cool.
So the last question is, if you were listening to this podcast on the day you became a parent, what would you want yourself to hear?
That this is the most relentless but best thing you'll ever do, and everything is eventually doable. On some days it feels like it's not, and that baby is going to beat you, but the parents always win. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer, but the parents eventually always win the battle. So you just have
that is true.
And just keep communicating. Communicate with everyone around you with like how you're feeling. It's okay to have days where you're like, fuck, this sucks. Oh my God. It's okay to have those days, but give yourself space if you have the luxury of not doing it by yourself. And even if you are doing it by yourself, ask people to help you. Ask for help. Everything's doable, and just be kind to yourself because it's a journey. But to be honest, the biggest secret about parenting, and I say this to all my friends that have babies, the biggest secret that nobody tells you until you figure it out yourself. None of us have any idea what the fuck we are doing. Like we don't.
Everyone is pretending.
Everything is guesswork. Like, you think that people have it figured out. They might have some part figured out. They've figured out something that's working for now. But what's working now may not work in 2 weeks' time. So
changes.
None of us know what the fuck we're doing, but we're just giving it a crack, keeping them safe, keeping them fed, keeping them warm, throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks. And you've just got to do your best. If you're being a good person, you'll figure it out somehow.
Yeah, perfect. Exactly. I love the idea of just like literally throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks, and you're like, oh, well, that works. That's good.
Yeah,
good.
Give it a go. Try that.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much, Sharyn, for coming on the pod. It was so lovely to have you.
I loved it. Thank you so much for having me. I actually had a really good time. It's very cathartic.
Oh, I'm glad. So for regular listeners, this is where the podcast ends. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for listening to Sharyn's podcast. For everyone else who's interested in hearing a sixth question, head over to my Substack where I'm going to be asking Sharyn a secret sixth question. We're going backstage. We're going behind the scenes. So if you're interested in that, the link in my bio for the Substack.
Why do you parent like that?
Thank you for listening to this episode of Why Do You Parent Like That? Why Do You Parent Like That is created by me, your gal, Abby Harrison. Huge love and snuggles to my gorgy nephew and niece, Thomas and Francis, for lending their voices to my jingle, as well as a massive thank you to the iHeartRadio Podcast Network team for giving this little pod a place to call home. Be sure to follow our socials to stay up to date with podcast happenings as well as chaotic insights to my life. If you have a story that you reckon would be neat to share on the pod, flick me an email at whydoyouparentlikeThatpodcast@gmail.com. Love you! Say it back.